Hello, everyone. Wilson Cole here, president of Adams, Evans, and Ross, ELOC Global Backdoor Hires, and I am joined with, on this call, as always, with our general counsel, attorney, and lovely daughter, Samantha. Sam, how are you doing?
I am trying not to go stir crazy. How about yourself?
I understand. You know, it's weird times that we're living in. Of course, as at the date of this, and we don't typically date them because I think it's timeless, but every now and then you have one of these 100-year events, and we're in a pandemic with COVID as we all speak. 2 weeks into kind of a self-quarantine, social distancing, and most everybody in the U.S. and in the world is working from home. And so we're going to go a little bit different. A lot of our recruiter clients are already working from home. Some of them worked out of offices and now they're working remotely. Our staffing clients, most of those worked in offices. And so Samantha and I were going to share some of the tools that we utilize. You know, we have a lot of employees spread out across the U.S. and across the globe. We have small offices that we almost use as a backup office if there's ever a technical issue or if there's a meeting, but probably we're a 28-year-old corporation. Back about 12 years ago, we went remotely with most of our folks because it just made more sense. And, I think if there is a gift, Samantha, that businesses are going to get from this, they're going to find out, oh my goodness, things still happen, probably happen better. And in the savings that people make on either not having to have a full-size office or have an office at all is huge. I mean, our estimates are roughly we save about $10,000 to $12,000 every single month. And some estimates it's a lot closer to 20 by having this setup that we have. And I'm a firm believer, the argument's always been, if my people work at home, they won't work. And I can tell you from a control freak, that is not the truth. And B, if that is the truth, you need new people. And C, there are tools that you can utilize. And the one that is just, they call it the Zoom Bloom, and that Zoom we have used for years on our meetings. In fact, the fact that we're on this meeting right now is always recorded on Zoom. Samantha, we'll go into some of the tools, but with you coming out of law school, you came and worked with Dad. Of course, we have the small offices, but for the most part, you're like me. You found that it's much easier to operate.
Avoid Atlanta traffic.
Avoid Atlanta traffic. You had a sister that it drove her crazy. She wanted that connection with folks and things along those lines. You still have a sister, and it still drives her crazy. But she did not adapt as well as you did. What's some of the advice that you can give to the millennials and all generations, but especially your generation, on how to work from home and how to stay productive and keep from going crazy?
Well, I think, I've kind of laughed because I have friends that there are a few of us that all work from home normally, but the ones that don't have been texting us like crazy going, how do you do this day in and day out? One of the main questions is how do you not go through all the snacks in your house? But also, I keep saying, well, there's the tips for now, and then there's the tips for if you work from home from here on out once the world goes back to normal. Because, my normal tips would be, try to leave the house once a day. That's really not possible right now. Having a dedicated workspace.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Is my biggest thing. And I know that, when I moved back to Atlanta and rented an apartment, I made sure it had an office. When I bought my house, I set up an office. Not everybody can do that on the fly. If it's the left side of your sofa is where you sit when you're working and the right side's when you're binging Tiger King, you have to have.
And by the way, getting me addicted to Tiger King. I'm midway through it. It is absolute trash TV, and I, in some ways, I'm appreciative. In other ways, I hate you for making me watch it. But anyway, so as you're separating your workspace from your friendly space.
That is the biggest adjustment. And granted, I am your child through and through when it comes to being a working from home, having to have that separation, because I try really hard not to walk back into my office at night after I leave the office. And, when I'm done working, in a normal scenario, working from home, when we can go places and things like that, I usually go run errands before I do anything else in the house, is almost a mental reboot. Sure. I have a friend who it's driving her nuts working from home. So what she's doing is she's commuting. And that commuting is she goes and walks around the block in her neighborhood once in the morning and sits down at her kitchen table and works all day and then walks it in reverse.
But I agree. That is good because, I play, which not playing as much now, but I played a lot of golf. And that was one thing I used to do is 5 o'clock during the summer or 5:30, I'd go out and play 9 holes and sometimes a little more, but that was kind of my decompression. I think having that dedicated space and, a lot of people will say, Wilson, man, that's a really cool office that you have. And I've been very blessed and also married your mother. And she's all very frugal. But one of the things, this is probably my office is probably one of the nicest rooms in the house. But when I had my office redone, I did it to where, because I spend so much time, to where you walk in, this is work, you walk out, and it's no longer work. But having that decompression and turning it off. With our situation, we have employees that are on literally opposite time frames on the other side of the globe. So if you don't turn it off, it winds up, and this was one thing I always warned you, is that you could literally work 24 hours. I purposely don't work any of our European stuff because a lot of times at night I'm talking to our teams over in the Pacific Rim while I would get up early, work Europe, and then work through, the U.S. here, and then try to work through, and that was just too much for me. So, you have the time frames and the dedicated space. Some of the tools for managing a remote workforce is Zoom. If you are needing phone lines, I've used Ring Central. I think we still use Ring Central on our main numbers coming in here. But one thing I have found, and I have no value, we don't get any referral fees or anything along those lines. Our back lines and all of our lines going out, and with even some of the lines coming in, we use Kixie. Kixie's quality to me is the closest to landline I've ever found. It is exceptionally good, even with small bandwidth. I had some quality issues from time to time with Ring Central, and maybe that was our bandwidth. I don't know, but Kixie is very good. Using Zoom. Also, if you're needing to track employees' actions, we use a thing called Staff Hub, and what it does is everybody logs on. It winds up, tracking everybody's movements, and then it takes random 3 screenshots every 10 minutes at different points during that 10 minutes. And I've always told my clients, it's not like we have somebody, or not our clients, our team members, it's not like we're watching it. If we see production drop off, then we'll go back and we'll pull those reports. And it's, if everybody is working remotely, it's like being in an office. But one of the things that I have found is it's easier for me to manage people with all of us being remote, because you can see if work is getting done versus seeing somebody busy. We had a young lady 15 years ago that looked like the busiest person in the office, and I didn't realize that was her job, to look like the busiest person in the office. She was a black hole. You'd give her a task, it would never get returned. And we wound up, it took us forever to crack that code and realize that she just simply wasn't working. And so those folks we would have gotten rid of working remotely. Sam, what are some of the tools that you utilize from a remote workforce, staying connected with your folks? What's some of the tools there?
I think you've got to keep the one thing that I do think we do a good job with on the Zoom meetings is we take time to discuss just life.
Yes.
So that you still keep the connection and the communication.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to know as readily available if somebody is having a sick relative or things like that, and you may need to take something off their plate. If you're not going into the office, you may not be as aware of those things.
Exactly. And that's really a good point. With our Zoom meetings with each team, and we meet typically at least once a week with most teams. Our sales and lead generation team, I meet with 3 times a week. And we block off an hour for each of those meetings. Between you and I could wrap up those meetings in 15 minutes. The reason we take an hour is for that water cooler chat, to have that connection, because I found that if the ones that were very social, and especially when you have salespeople, by nature, they're very social, we had a higher turnover rate. And we started extending out those meetings, and we saw our turnover almost go non-existent because everybody started getting those connections. And that is a really good point of use the meetings to connect on a human level. Yes, you can get through that meeting in 15 minutes, but you probably want to take 40 minutes.
Like our dark government meetings, as you refer to me and one of our colleagues. Those are probably 10 minutes of work, and then we can, discuss life and what needs to happen to just keep things moving forward.
And I agree with you 100%. And that is one thing that just staying connected. And that was the biggest challenge that I had from a logistics standpoint. We had tools. Everybody's using a CRM. Everybody's using a web-based CRM or an applicant tracking system, whatever you want to call it. But those contact managers are all now all on the web. And so you don't have to be in the office. Back in the old days, Sam, you used to have all the computers literally plugged into each other. Now you can do it via from the web. But the biggest issue is the connection. And then also one of the things that I found that works exceptionally well is Office 365 versus the download. And there again, most everybody that's using Microsoft is using Office 365. If they're not, then every time their computer crashes, they're probably losing emails. Something else that we utilize that's pretty good is Basecamp. Basecamp is a kind of where you can have where you can upload on different projects and continue conversations across all time zones. It's about $80 a month, but it's actually pretty doggone good. The other thing that I would recommend is set up a time to be down at your office in the morning. As much as having that turn it off is to be routine. I'm in my office every morning by 10 o'clock. That's when I start my day. You start your day at about 8 or 9, but I'm typically going until midnight working with the teams over on the other side of the globe. And it's also just my body clock. I get up and do my morning routine for a couple of hours, and then here on.
You and I have to set rules of, if we're talking not work related stuff, of I'm not allowed to talk work with you before about 10, even if we're talking about life, and you can't talk work with me after about 8 on the other side.
Exactly. And if you work with family, that's something that everybody has to do, is know when to turn the work off. But I think one of the gifts of COVID
getting dressed.
Absolutely.
That is another one that I'm having in conversations, talking with friends of, because also they want to talk about, how do you not eat all the snacks in your house? Wearing pants with a button.
Well, and just wearing pants in general. I mean, getting dressed. I mean, I'm as you can see today, I'm kind of wearing a golf shirt, but I do have pants on. And getting dressed and putting yourself into the aspect. One of the things that I think companies are going to realize in the old world, and this is somebody that has 3 companies. One of those have been, on the Inc. 500 list for the fastest growing companies in the U.S. One of the things that old companies figure their assets or their office buildings. We had an office building, and their equipment and things on those lines. New companies, really, it's your customer list, it's your cash flows, and it's your marketing and digital assets, and then just cash that you have in the bank. The offices and all of that stuff become really a liability. I mean, you're talking to a guy that owned a 2-story office building where everybody came in, for a decade or longer. I look at that now as what a horrible utilization of assets. And, we can argue, okay, the building was an asset, but commercial real estate specifically for this reason is going down, or at least here in Atlanta. The small and mid-sized office buildings are very deflated. And I think this may accelerate that. Sam, any closing thoughts on how to help old folks, young folks, and everybody else just working from there without going crazy?
I think just work and then life. Don't try to merge them.
Yeah.
Don't try to go work from in front of the TV or, I know that there are going to be the situations where you're going to have to merge them because right now schools are closed and daycares. I've been very thankful I don't have kids right now after talking to 2 of my sisters and 2 of my best friends. But so you're going to have to merge that with right now, but just try to keep it as separate as possible so that you don't turn into work all the time or you aren't working at all.
I agree. And I mean, and that's just it, is get into a routine. And I think that going forward, especially if this thing lasts, I mean, originally they were saying a couple of weeks. Now we're looking at 4 to 6 to 8 weeks. And the good news is here in the next couple of weeks, that's going to be the new norm. And commerce is still being done. I think you're going to see a new shift with the smaller companies, because the surprising thing is the larger companies, where you used to have all these call centers like JetBlue and things along those lines, and even American Express, they now have one of the largest remote workforces, and they're saving gazillions of dollars in office space. The small to mid-sized company wanted to go in and be surrounded by their people. And that is such a horrible utilization of assets, in my opinion. And from a profitability standpoint, it's worked very well for us. But the biggest thing is just designate the space. If you need to put trackers on folks, and I'm one to say, especially on some teams, you do want to have trackers on. Staff Hub's a good option. Sam, we'll go ahead and let you go, and we'll see you next week, and be safe, and I'm sure we'll be talking through the week.
Sounds good.